Hello, everyone. We are going to do another walkthrough through Nearpod just so we can make sure that we fully understand everything that we talked about yesterday during our PD. So once again, we'll be focusing on Nearpod and kind of what it can do for you and how you can use it with your students and how it can be used for that feedback piece that we talked about yesterday. So the Nearpod app will look like this is the one I'm hovering over. Your students have access to this as well on their Clever page. It's probably the easiest way for both you and your class to access it. If you do not have it, you can always add it to your Clever page. Another idea is to have your students, once they locate it once, make sure they favorite it and it'll appear at the top of their page, just so it's easily accessible for when they're ready to actually use it. So once you're ready to go into your Nearpod, this is what it will look like from your perspective once it loads. So you have, if you've done it before, you have your previous lessons that'll appear here in the middle. But in terms of creation of your Nearpod lessons or Nearpod activities, that'll be right here at the top where it says My Lessons, and then I'll have a blue button that says Create. So on your drop down, you can create here within Nearpod, but what we talked about yesterday was using Google Slides, just because we are familiar with Google Slides and we've had a number of years of practice and usage with it, as have your kids. So we're going to show you how you can create with Nearpod using Google Slides. So once you click Google Slides, it'll take you to that. It'll kind of exit you out through Nearpod and into your Google Slide platform that, once again, should look familiar because we've had a number of years of practice and usage with it. So once you get to this point through Nearpod, you can do one big thing to make sure that you have your add-on, because you don't always have to go through Nearpod. You could just go to your Google Drive, create a new slide, and what I'll show you now, it will have the same process that we just did, but just kind of via Google Slides. So essentially what this first slide is doing is it wants you to add on Nearpod as an extension. So up here on the top of your toolbar, you have a button that says Add-ons. Notice I have Nearpod here. So majority of us did that yesterday, but if you don't have Nearpod as your add-on, you can click where it says Get Add-ons. Your next screen will load. It might appear at the beginning. If not, you can search Nearpod, and you would just go ahead and install it. And then once again, your easy access, once you go back to your add-ons, here's your extension. You can open up Nearpod, and then on the right-hand side, it'll feature all those things that we talked about yesterday that can help us build some different things to make some stuff more engaging for your students as you are talking about your topic area. So the things that we mentioned yesterday that we will go over again, just so we have a full understanding, is drag and drop, draw it, and quiz. So we'll start with quiz. That's probably your easiest one. So you're going to scroll down, find the quiz button, and you can go ahead and click it. And this will give you the access to actually create your quiz for your students. So a couple important things on here. So one, with your question, right here we'll have a section where you can actually put in whatever you are asking. So just like yesterday, our question was, what is 2 plus 2? So if that's your question, you obviously need to go ahead and put some answers for it. So what you would do is down here at the bottom, you can put in the answer choices that you would like for them to see. The other important thing is make sure that you select what the correct answer is for your purposes and for theirs. So make sure that whatever the answer is for your question, that you select it. Okay. You can also, as we talked about yesterday, if you wanted to snippet some different things with ARC or Eureka, you can also add an image that will appear. So your students could look at that. That'll kind of go with your question as well. So once you have done that, you can add more answers. You can add more questions. But if you're just sticking with the one, make sure you select the correct answer, and then you'll hit save. And what it'll do is it'll create that part, what you just created, as a slide for your presentation. So it'll appear over here as your slide. You also have the ability to always edit your slide. So notice as I click on it, over here on the side, it will say edit. So you can go back and make changes if you need to. All right, the next one we talked about yesterday was drag and drop. So once again, just another good thing to label, or if you need to put things into categories or to kind of match different things, that is an option as well. So same thing. Up here would be ask your question, where you could say something like put your labels into certain categories that all match each other. So that was your same thing. Your question will go up here. And where you'll go to labels, you'll click on, once again, text labels. So you can put that there. You can just type in your words, hit OK. And then you have the ability you can change how the size that will appear. If you did not want that as label, you can remove it or kind of take it to the trash. But once you're done, you can hit done. And then your labels will appear here on the side. Okay. Another important thing that we talked about yesterday, it's the same thing. You can add a background onto your picture that you could use as kind of a labeling activity, whether it is a picture or if you have some sort of diagram that you wanted your kids to put your labels into, you could do it that way. Another thing we talked about yesterday is when you're going through your activity with your students, the instructions might cover up the picture or the activity that you're doing. They can always click that button and take it up, and then your directions will go away, and then you'll get the full picture. So same thing, whenever you're done, you can hit save, and it will create it as a slide. All right, and then the last one we talked about was the draw it one. So this is a good thing to have students if you want to underline, circle certain things that you are kind of focusing on with, once again, whatever your topic area you are doing. Same thing, instructions at the top. You could use this, the background is what some of our classes that have already used it have done, some with morning meetings. So you could put your text or your picture that you wanted up there as your background, and the kids would work over top of it using either the text tool or the pen tool to underline or circle different things on the draw it part. Okay, it's the same thing, save, and then that will be created as a slide. All right, once you're all done with whatever you have here I've created, okay, you can hit save and go, and it will go back to Nearpod. So it'll start on the same screen that we left to create our slides, and then it will save it within your library so you can have it all in one place. Right, so those are a couple big things on terms of the back end of what it will look like. And then in terms of how you can make this look for your students, there's two different ways. One is live participation, where you are in charge of that. You set the pace of how you want your kids to look at it. When you move a slide, it'll move on their screen. They don't have the ability to move on their own. Student pace, however, is the opposite, where you can give them the slides or the lesson, and they can go through on their own. So the two different things, once again, live participation and student paced. Okay. And as we went through, we talked about yesterday, your screen will appear different than theirs. They'll see all the content that you have created, and you'll see the answers that they choose, and you'll see the work that is done on their end. Okay. Same thing we talked about yesterday as well. Once you push out whatever you're doing, okay, you can resume lessons from previous days if you needed to. So say you had a pretty in-depth presentation that might have had 15 plus slides, and you only got through a certain amount of them, you can continue on with your lessons. So these are some things like from yesterday or maybe before that. So it has the same code that you would use, and you can continue that. But if you're ready for a new one, you just launch new. It'll provide a different code for your students that'll appear in the middle at the beginning. Okay, middle at the beginning. And then even if you exit out of it, your code will always appear up here in the top left corner. So your code will always be visible for your students in case they happen to exit out or they get kicked out accidentally. Your code will always be up here for them to see, even if you're going through your presentation. Okay. One other really important thing before we talk about one final thing with our report, so we can see all those answers that our students give, is the two things up here. Okay. One is you can add in an activity in the middle of your presentation if you wanted to. It's the same thing. You can click add activity, and then you can add in a question, and it'll provide it onto your presentation. Another important thing that you can add on to it is called Open Whiteboard. So you can draw or write on essentially a blank whiteboard that will share to the student screens in real time. So if you really wanted to use that feedback to address why certain students aren't grasping your concept, you could use this whiteboard to either work out problems or type in certain things. So those are two other options. Okay. Once again, when you're ready to leave, you can click back, you can end the session. For students page, there'll be a drop-down arrow on the top right where they can click and exit the lesson as well. Last important thing that we talked about in terms of Nearpod is we want to make sure that we can actually see and use that data that we had gotten from our presentation, whether it was a quiz, draw it, whatever the case may be. The three dots, and then you can go ahead and go to reports. And it will provide the different statistics of students' correct answers, what they missed, how they answered in a report. So you can click on the lesson that you did, the different time periods that you did. Overall, it will give you a grasp on, how many correct answers, how many wrong, if students didn't answer, okay, and it will give percentages of, once again, if they got it right or wrong. And then you can really narrow it down by going over to the activities that you did. So we'll use the quiz as an example. So our question was, what is 5 times 5? The answer should have been 25. So as you can see over here, all right, our answers are 25. So this will help us with, one, who got it right, and then two, if we got it wrong, why did we get it wrong and why did we get that answer? So you can see kind of who's on the right track and who might need a little bit of help. So that is our Nearpod kind of rehash of what we went over yesterday. Once again, if you have any questions on any of the stuff that we talked about, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to come in and do somewhat of a mini lesson for your students so they can understand the different tools with Nearpod so you can be ready to use it with them. Thanks.